Kia ora, welcome to my first process layout video using the Dreamin Big collection. So I have taken to purchasing the Workshops Your Way collection scrapbooking kits. These come with the paper packets, the complements, 4 cardstock sheets. So in this case it's 1 Gold Rush, 2 Whisper and 1 White Daisy. And they come with sequins and the thick twine that you can see here. I have already created some layouts using this kit, and so these were created at a retreat recently where I wasn't able to video record what I was doing as I went. So there's some zip strips. I saved these because often these make quite cool features or embellishments on different pages. You can see the double-sided sheets that I have left here that I'm flicking through. As well as the pocket pages or the Picture My Life cards. And the complements, I've used some of these, but there's still plenty to go. And here's the thick twine. It is quite thick, however it did go through the page reasonably easy, as you'll see in one of my layouts, whether this one or a future one, with a rather thick needle, using the paper piercer first. So these are some of the colours recommended to go with this paper collection. I also have purchased the stamping and card making bundle of these. So I've got thin cuts that go with some of the bug stamps. And I'm just showing you the thin cut base here because it's magnetic, so it makes storage of these quite nice and easy. I've taken to storing these in one of my 6x8 albums, just using the 6x4 pocket pages. So I trim it down slightly, the magnetic sheet, and it just slides in there quite comfortably, and it means I can see the thin cuts. However, I keep the bundles together in the stamp bundle packet. So I'm scrapbooking this picture of my son in his element with his gaming stuff all set up, rather relaxed over the weekend, with his bedroom in a mess, as per usual for him. It's one of those battles that sometimes you've got to pick them, and getting him to clean his room isn't one of the top of the priority lists. Making his bed, however, is, even though he seems to prefer a sleeping bag. But I'm using quite a few of the pocket pages here, and I'm going to use a few leftover pieces. So the only really full piece of paper that I use for this page is actually the background wood grain type one that I've picked here. So trim off your photograph about 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. And this means that you can cut your cardstock, which I'm about to do here, into 6 4x6 pieces, and you'll get a border around each photograph. So this is good economical use of your cardstock. So you'll see here I'm creating 6 standard photo borders, and they're ready for use. I'm going to use one of them here, and you'll see the border that it creates around the edge there. So I got these photographs printed at Warehouse Stationery before the retreat, so therefore I didn't print them with the border like I often do when I use my selfie. But if I'm doing lots of photographs, it is more economical, more cost effective to get them printed elsewhere. There's a few online places, but locally, if I'm running late as per usual, there's a few shops that have them, and Warehouse Stationery seems to have a fairly quick and simple, painless process. So trying to use lots of different layers and bits and pieces, sort of emulating the layers and mess that is in my son's bedroom, playing with the coloured in pieces, but trying to make sure that that photo doesn't get lost in the background or in the papers and things that I choose to put on there. You'll see that my complements packs had lots of bits trimmed out. I do this so that I can place pieces on the page and then make the choice as to whether I like that or not, without removing the sticky piece off and making it less sticky. So again, the zip strip here needed a little bit more trimmed off. And I decided I didn't want all of the repeated words, just one of each word to slip on there as well. I've sort of got it in groups of 3 here, so there's the red heart with the red life and that red zip strip I've just used, which creates sort of a triangle around the photograph. It's just another design element that's been incorporated into this page. Okay, so I'm using an ink dauber here and I think it was the slate ink, and I'm just inking the edges. I didn't want it black because I don't want it to be totally different from everything, but just using the softer grey just adds a finish, gives it a little bit of a finish, but it also means that it's not too dominant and doesn't take over. For this one I didn't ink the edges of the stickers. You can do this. It just means that you're sort of holding the sticker a little bit before you put it down. So just make sure that you do that carefully, touching as little of the sticky bit as possible. So just inking the edges seems to lift things off the page, and it just adds a little bit more dimension, as well as I said before, looking a little bit more finished off. I find the ink daubers are a safe way of inking up the edges, because if I use it straight off the ink pad, it seems to spread everywhere and make a mess. So by doing it this way, I've got more control to give it a more even edging. And inking up the last zip strip. Placing the pieces when you've done layering type work can be a little bit tricky. Some people like to pencil mark where they're going to put things. Because of the messy nature of this layout, the perfection or the lining up isn't important. Sometimes I would take a photo of the page before I remove the pieces to ink them. However, the device I would use to take the photos recording the video. So I decided to have part of the pocket page sneaking out underneath as well as part at the top. And so to make this go a little bit further, it meant chopping it in half or third, or chopping a third off so I can add the dimension down the bottom. And time for some sticking. So I'm using our Tombow permanent tape roller here. This is available in the online store, but it currently isn't shown in the catalogues. So by starting at the bottom piece, I'm then able to work back up with the positioning and things like that. So yeah, working from the back through to the front when it comes to sticking them down. And here I'm just using the mat to line up, looking visually across our Versamat, because it's got the measurements down the sides, meaning that I can sort of visually see whether it's at that 7.5 inch kind of mark, to line those pieces up at both sides, so then I don't have a sloping layout. Unless I want the pieces sloping, just like the heart at the top is. This tape is permanent, so once it's down, and you do run the risk of tearing paper underneath if you have to reposition things. And you'll notice here sticking down the life that I didn't think terribly carefully about where I was putting my dot, And so instead of dotting my I's and crossing my T's, I decided to dot the L. I realise a little bit later on in this process what I've done, and I am able to shift the sticker across without any damage to the actual page. So adding the journaling at the bottom half of the heart pocket piece that I've used. Thinking about how I can fit the words in the space available. And running out of room, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so using the piercing mat and the piercing tool, I'm going to have some thread kisses. So for each cross, I'm creating 4 squares. And so I'm going to do 3 of them, part of that design element. And because I've pierced the hole, it does take a little bit to pull it through, and I had to be careful not to tear more of it, but because our papers are quite a good thick consistency, it means that the tearing isn't such a big issue. If it was a thinner paper, it could be a problem, but the weight of our papers are able to handle these heavy threads and stitching through them. Because of the thickness of the thread, it would be important to make sure that your holes aren't too close together, because it could spread across, meaning that you won't get the effect you want. Here you go. I realised that my eye was in the wrong spot, so I've now shifted that across. The dot of my eye was in the wrong spot. And stitching through the back, just tidied up a bit, and I'm just using some washi tape here just to tie the bits, keep the bits nice and safe and snug in the back. And my 3 crosses, adding a few of the sequins around the place to add some interest in groups of 3 here. And done.